The stars outside the colony ship shimmered in silence, but inside the control deck the atmosphere was heavy with fear. Red sirens flashed across the corridors, warning every crew member to prepare for the unknown. The sensors had caught something so massive that it dwarfed any ship humanity had ever built. At first the officers thought it was an asteroid drifting through space, but the readings showed a strange pulse, something alive. The commander ordered the ship to hold position, engines silent, hearts pounding. No one spoke loudly. They all knew what it could mean, first contact with a threat beyond imagination. The object drifted closer, rotating slowly in the endless void, and as the scanners locked on, the image became clearer. It was not a ship. It was a body so huge that it filled the main screen. The crew gasped. Suspended in the cold dark was a warrior, armored in broken alien metal, scarred and silent, as if death had already claimed him. He was at least 4 times the height of a human. His breathing was faint, but it existed. Something alive was clinging to survival just beyond their windows. No one dared speak, until one young officer whispered the question they were all thinking: do we save it, or do we let it die? The captain of the colony ship, Elias Marlowe, stood frozen as he stared at the figure. Training told him to be cautious, to treat every unknown as hostile, but his instincts pushed another way. This was not just debris. This was a being. A giant who had crossed the stars and somehow ended up here, alone, broken, and vulnerable. "Bring it aboard," Elias ordered at last, his voice steady though doubt churned in his chest. The crew obeyed with hesitation. Magnetic arms extended, pulling the massive body into the docking bay. The sirens continued to echo, reminding everyone that danger was already among them. Once inside, the medics surrounded the alien form. His armor was ancient, marked with strange glowing runes that flickered weakly as if powered by dying energy. His body was covered with wounds that no human medicine could fully understand. Yet beneath it all, there was strength. Muscles coiled like steel, veins pulsing with a rhythm far different from human biology. One medic dared to check for signs of life, and when the alien's chest rose with a deep, thunderous breath, the room went silent. He was alive. The silence was broken by a heavy thud. The alien's arm twitched, his massive hand curling as though gripping a weapon long lost. Several guards raised their rifles, aiming at his head, but Elias raised his hand. "Stand down." His not attacking. His dreaming. No one slept that cycle. Rumors spread through the ship like fire. Some said the alien was a survivor from a war unknown to humans. Others whispered that he was a weapon sent as bait. Some believed he was a god, fallen from the stars. Fear clung to the crew, but curiosity was stronger. Humanity had reached across the galaxy searching for neighbors, and now one had literally fallen into their arms. But was this neighbor a friend or a destroyer? Hours passed before the alien's eyes opened. They were not human eyes. They glowed with a faint golden hue, deep and ancient, like suns compressed into orbs. His gaze swept across the chamber, landing on each human, but then it stopped. He stared directly at Captain Elias, and something in that look made the air heavy. Slowly, painfully, the alien pushed himself up, chains of medical restraints creaking as though they were toys in his grip. The humans raised their weapons again, their fingers tense on the triggers. But the alien did not strike. Instead, he lowered his head. He bowed, a gesture so shocking that it froze everyone where they stood. A giant warrior, scarred by battles across unknown stars, was bowing to a human captain. "Why me?" Elias whispered under his breath. The alien's voice rumbled like thunder through the chamber, his words broken but understandable. "Chosen, found, you." The meaning was unclear, but the weight of it pressed on every ear that heard it. Elias felt an unease grow in his chest. The alien had recognized him, not the crew, not the ship, but him. It was no accident. Something larger was at play, and humanity had just stepped into it without warning. As the alien's strength returned little by little, the sense of danger grew. The crew wanted him gone, ejected back into the void, but Elias couldn't ignore the truth. This was no ordinary encounter. This was the beginning of something that would decide the fate of humanity itself. And as the stars outside seemed to flicker more violently, as though watching, Elias knew one thing for certain. Their world had just changed, and there was no turning back. The alien's presence weighed on the colony ship like a storm cloud that refused to pass. The crew walked with nervous glances, whispering in corners, and even the sound of machinery seemed quieter when the giant was awake. He remained inside the medical bay, though nothing could have kept him there if he wished otherwise. His size alone was enough to bend the steel doors, his strength enough to rip through walls, yet he stayed still. He did not fight. He did not roar. He only watched, his golden eyes fixed often on Captain Elias, as if the human carried an invisible mark only he could see. Elias visited him often, against the advice of his officers. He would stand near the reinforced glass and speak to the alien, his words plain, his voice calm. "Who are you? Why are you here?" At first, there was no answer, only silence broken by the hum of life support machines. But then, slowly, words began to emerge from the giant's mouth. His voice was rough, heavy, like boulders grinding together, yet the meaning was clear. "I, K.A. Rath, last, of Clan Dross." The name struck no recognition in the humans, but the weight with which he said it was enough to command silence. Elias leaned closer. "Clan Dross, what happened to them?" Kaerath lowered his gaze, and for the first time, the humans saw not a warrior but a being carrying unbearable grief. "Destroyed," he said at last. "All destroyed by the Devourers." The word lingered in the air like poison. The crew members in the room exchanged looks of unease. It was not just the way he said it, but the way his entire body seemed to harden when the name was spoken, like scars deep within his soul. "Devourers?" Elias asked, his brow furrowed. "Who are they?" Kaeratha's eyes lifted, burning with a fury that made even the armed guards step back. "Not who. What? Endless. Hunger. Worlds turned to ash. Armies broken. Stars silenced." His voice cracked with the memory. "My people fought. We fell. Alone, I remain." The chamber grew colder with his words. Humanity had never faced such a description. Armies broken. Stars silenced. It sounded impossible, yet the conviction in Kaeratha's tone left no room for doubt. Elias knew then that this was no accident. This alien had not simply drifted here. He had come carrying a warning carved in the bones of his people. Still, the crew was divided. Some saw him as a survivor seeking refuge. Others saw him as a threat luring humanity into a war not their own. Council meetings grew heated. Officers argued, voices sharp with fear. "He's lying," one shouted. "What proof do we have of his so-called devourers? For all we know, he's a spy, sent to weaken us." Another officer countered, "Then why would he arrive nearly dead? Why would he bow to our captain instead of crushing us all? Look at him, he could tear this ship apart with his bare hands." Elias listened but spoke little. His eyes always drifted back to Kaerath, the way the alien's gaze seemed to pierce through fear and anger alike. It was not the gaze of a conqueror. It was the gaze of someone who had lost everything. That night, when most of the crew slept uneasily, Elias entered the medical bay alone. Kaerath was awake, his wounds healing faster than human science could explain. The alien's chest rose and fell with steady breaths, his massive hands resting on his knees like stone pillars. "Why did you bow to me?" Elias asked quietly. Kaeratha's head tilted, his golden eyes locking onto the captain with unwavering intensity. "Because you are the one." The words rattled through Elias, though their meaning was still a mystery. "The one what?" Kaerath shifted, his armor clinking softly like shattered glass. "Prophecy. My clan, long ago, told of humans. Small. Fragile. Yet chosen. In the end, it is you who decide, the fate of all." Elias shook his head in disbelief. "That's impossible. We're explorers, colonists. Humanity has barely touched the stars. How could we decide anything?" Kaeratha's voice deepened, carrying an ancient certainty. "Because the Devourers come. And when they do, no world escapes. My people, strong, proud, destroyed. But humans, different. You are unbroken." Silence followed. Elias felt his throat tighten. A prophecy. Humanity's fate tied to the destiny of the galaxy. It sounded absurd, yet everything about Kaerath radiated truth. The weight in his voice, the scars on his body, the haunted look in his eyes, this was no tale woven to trick them. He believed it with every breath. The next morning, the crew gathered once more in the council chamber. Elias stood before them, his voice firm. This alien is not here by accident. He brings a warning, and we cannot ignore it. The room erupted in protest. We should eject him, shouted one officer. He's leading danger right to us. If he's right, Elias countered, then the danger is already coming. And if we send him away, we'll face it unprepared. The debate continued, voices clashing like swords. Fear battled with reason, caution with curiosity. And while humans argued among themselves, K'Arath sat silently in the medbay, his golden eyes watching the stars beyond the glass. He knew the truth they could not yet accept. The Devourers were not far. The galaxy had already begun to tremble under their hunger. And soon, humanity would have no choice but to face them. The question was not if. The question was when. And whether they would face the storm as fragile mortals, or rise as something greater. Training sessions aboard the colony ship had always been routine, strict drills, repeated maneuvers, the kind of discipline that kept humans sharp in the dangerous void of space. But with K'Arath on board, training was no longer ordinary. The alien warrior towered over the crew, his shadow alone enough to silence a room, yet his movements carried a strange patience. At first, the humans refused to spar with him, their fear outweighing curiosity, but Captain Elias insisted. If he is our ally, Elias said, then we must learn from him. If he is our enemy, then we must learn what he is capable of. Either way, knowledge was survival. In the training deck, K'Arath removed what remained of his broken armor, revealing scars etched across skin thicker than any metal plate. His body told the story of endless battles, burns, claw marks, blade wounds, all healed, all endured. The humans stared, both awed and unsettled. K'Arath picked up a steel staff, the heaviest weapon in the armory, and twirled it as if it were nothing more than a branch. Then, with a nod toward Elias, he began to teach. His lessons were not in words alone, for his language still faltered. Instead, he demonstrated. A block here, a strike there, footwork that seemed impossible for a creature of his size. He moved with the grace of a predator, fluid yet brutal, every motion honed for survival. Again, he said when Elias tried to mimic the stance. Hours passed as sweat soaked through human uniforms, and yet K'Arath hardly slowed. His patience never wavered, but his gaze remained sharp, correcting errors with a grunt or a single guiding hand that felt like a wall pressing against the chest. Slowly, the crew began to understand. K'Arath was not showing dominance. He was sharing knowledge, passing fragments of his lost people to those who might carry the fight forward. But trust did not come easily. In the mess hall, whispers continued. He's just preparing us for slaughter, one soldier muttered. Why else would he teach us to fight like him? So when his army arrives, we'll already know his style. Another replied bitterly, what army? He said his people are gone. Fear made suspicion bloom like a disease. Some wanted K'Arath locked away, others demanded he be cast back into space. Elias defended him at every council, but the captain knew doubt was growing like cracks in a hull. Then came the signal. A faint blip on the long-range scanners at first, dismissed as interference, but soon repeating, spreading, growing into a wave. The ship's communications officer stiffened as the screen filled with readings. Captain, unknown contacts. Multiple. Moving fast. Elias hurried to the deck, K'Arath following silently behind him. The screen painted a grim picture, ships unlike any human design, vast and jagged, like shards of broken worlds welded into fleets. Energy signatures flared around them, violent and unnatural. Fear crawled through the room as the reality set in. Elias turned to K'Arath. Is that them? K'Arath's eyes burned gold as he gazed at the display. He gave one solemn nod. Devourers. The word dropped like a stone in the silence. The crew froze, their fears confirmed. Humanity was not alone in the galaxy, and its neighbors were monsters. Panic rippled, officers shouting over each other, arguing retreat, attack, hiding. K'Arath's voice cut through the chaos. If you fight, without me, you will not survive. His words were not threat but fact, carved from memory. He stepped forward, massive frame filling the deck as he pointed to the approaching swarm. They destroy, without reason, without mercy. You are not ready. But I can help. Suspicion battled with desperation in the human's eyes. Elias studied him carefully. He wanted to trust the alien, yet every instinct screamed caution. But then he remembered the prophecy, the bow, the scars carved deep into Ratha's body. This was not a deceiver. This was a survivor. And survivors carried truth. What do you propose? Elias asked. Ratha's chest rumbled with a deep growl that almost sounded like laughter. Teach you more. Train you harder. Together, maybe stand. The council was divided once again. Some demanded immediate retreat, others pressed to strike before the enemy reached human colonies. But Ratha's voice remained steady, heavy with certainty. Run, and they follow. Hide, and they find. Fight, and maybe live. In the days that followed, the ship became a crucible. Rath trained humans until their bodies ached and their spirits broke, only to push them to rise again. His methods were merciless, yet every soldier could feel themselves growing sharper, faster, more dangerous. Even those who hated him could not deny the results. Still, the unease never faded. At night, some whispered that Rath was preparing humanity not for survival but for sacrifice, molding them into weapons for his unknown purpose. Elias wrestled with the same doubt in silence. Yet when he looked into the alien's eyes, he saw not a schemer but a warrior carrying a burden too heavy to bear alone. The Devourer's fleet crept closer each day, their dark ships spreading across the stars like a plague. Tension twisted through the crew, fear threatening to shatter discipline. But Rath remained unshaken, his presence like a mountain in the storm. And though many did not yet trust him, they all began to understand one truth. If humanity was to stand any chance against what was coming, they could not do it without the giant warrior who had fallen into their hands. Elias felt the weight of prophecy pressing tighter with each passing hour. Rath had chosen him, but why? Why a human captain on a single colony ship? What fate had been woven that bound their paths together? He did not yet have the answer. But the Devourers were coming, and soon the stars themselves would burn with war. Humanity stood at the edge of annihilation. And in the darkness, a fragile bond between a man and a giant alien warrior was the only light. The colony ship drifted at the edge of a dying star system, its hull scarred by weeks of relentless drills and uneasy silence. Inside, the atmosphere had grown heavy, not only from the looming shadow of the Devourers but from the bitter debate tearing humanity apart. Some officers demanded Rath be locked away, claiming his presence had cursed them. Others, worn down by endless training sessions and his unshakable calm, began to see him as their only hope. Every council meeting ended in shouting. Humanity had found an ally, or an enemy, they could not fully understand. Captain Elias stood at the center of it all, his voice the only anchor in a sea of fear. The Devourers are real. We've seen their fleet. We've seen their strength. You all know we cannot stand against them with human tactics alone. His words cut across the chamber, but his fellow officers fired back. And you believe this alien will save us? One demanded, his fists slamming the table. You're gambling all of humanity on a single creature's story. Another officer leaned forward, his voice low with suspicion. Or worse, what if he's leading them here? What if he's guiding us into the jaws of the enemy? The accusation stung, but Elias held his ground. If that were true, we'd already be dead. He has no need to trick us. He could tear this ship apart with his bare hands. Instead, he fights beside us. That should tell you everything. Rath himself was not present in the chamber. He waited in silence within the training deck, seated like a mountain, his golden eyes closed as though meditating. Yet even absent, his shadow stretched across every word spoken, every fear whispered. When Elias returned to him after the council, Rath opened his eyes slowly. They do not trust me, he said, voice deep, calm, almost resigned. Elias gave a tired nod. Trust isn't earned in days. And fear is louder than reason. Ratha's gaze drifted to the stars beyond the glass viewport. Fear. I know it well. My people feared the Devourers. We built great weapons. Raised great armies. None were enough. Fear makes cowards. But it also makes warriors. His words lingered in Elias's mind long after he left the deck. The following week brought no comfort. The Devourer's fleet drew closer, their signals growing stronger, their movements spreading like a plague. Human probes sent to observe never returned. Every new report shook the crew's morale. Then came the first battle. A squadron of human ships, dispatched to slow the enemy, was erased in moments. The survivors' transmissions were filled with screams, static, and then silence. The Devourers had not only destroyed them, they had devoured the wreckage, stripping ships and bodies alike into nothingness. When the recordings were played back in the council chamber, silence fell. No one spoke. No one breathed. The Devourers were not an abstract threat anymore. They were real. They were unstoppable. Kaerath was brought into the chamber for the first time. He loomed over the humans, his voice resonating with a grim certainty. Now you see. This is what they are. Endless. Hunger without limit. My people thought we could resist. We were wrong. If you fight them as you are, you will fall. The officers' faces were pale, their arguments broken. But Kaerath was not finished. He stepped forward, lowering his head slightly, his voice deep and heavy. There is a way. But it has cost. Elias leaned forward, tension gripping his chest. What way? Kaerath's golden eyes burned with a strange light, a mixture of sorrow and hope. The Forge of Dross. My people built it long ago. A weapon, alive. It can wound the Devourers. But it feeds on life. Blood must be given. Strength must be surrendered. The chamber erupted with outrage. Officers shouted, demanding to know if the alien was suggesting human sacrifice. Some accused him of lying, others of trying to trick them into killing themselves. Kaerath did not flinch. He let the storm pass, his expression unchanging. When silence returned, he spoke again, softer this time. You ask why I live. Why I drifted to you. This is why. The forge cannot be awakened by me. My kind failed. It listens now, only to humans. His confession sent a shiver through the room. The prophecy he had mentioned before now took on sharper meaning. Humanity was not just a chance ally, they were the key to a weapon forged for a war that spanned centuries. Elias felt the weight pressing heavier on his shoulders. He looked around the chamber, seeing fear twisting every face, but beneath it, something else was beginning to emerge. Not trust. Not yet. But resolve. The Devourers were coming. Humanity could not outrun them. And here was a chance, however terrible, to fight back. That night, Elias found himself alone with Kaerath in the dim glow of the training deck. The alien warrior sat cross-legged, his voice a low rumble. You fear what must be done. Elias nodded, unable to hide the truth. If what you say is true, I'd be asking my people to die for a weapon we don't understand. Kaerath's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in something almost like compassion. Every war demands sacrifice. The Devourers do not give choices. They take everything. Better to choose how we bleed, than to bleed with nothing gained. Silence stretched between them. Elias felt the weight of a decision he could not yet make. Trusting Kaerath meant risking the lives of countless humans. Refusing him meant certain annihilation. Either path led through fire. But as he looked into the alien's eyes, Elias realized something that shook him even more than the prophecy or the threat of the Devourers. Kaerath was not asking humanity to fight for his people, for his dead clan, or even for vengeance. He was asking them to fight for themselves. And in that realization, Elias felt the faint spark of something he had not felt since the red alert first sounded. Hope. The tension aboard the colony ship had reached its breaking point. Weeks of training under Kaerath's unyielding eye had hardened the crew, but it had also deepened their fears. Every scar across the alien's body was a reminder of battles already lost, every golden stare a reminder that he knew something they did not. And though Captain Elias had defended him at every turn, whispers of betrayal slithered through the corridors like smoke. Some of the officers believed Kaerath was not a savior but a trap, a lure leading humanity straight into the Devourer's jaws. Others argued that he was grooming Elias himself, binding him with prophecy and flattery, until the captain could no longer see reason. Fear has a way of turning comrades into enemies, and soon a faction within the ship began to plot in secret. Their decision was born from desperation: kill Ka Wrath before it was too late. The attempt came in silence. During the deep hours of the ship's cycle, while most of the crew slept, a group of armed soldiers entered the medbay where Ka Wrath often rested after training. Their weapons were primed with experimental charges, designed to pierce even the strongest alien hide. They surrounded his massive form, his golden eyes closed, his breathing steady. For a moment, it seemed easy. Too easy. The leader of the faction raised his weapon, whispering, "For humanity." The shot never came. In a blur, Ka Wrath's arm moved faster than their eyes could follow, his hand seizing the barrel of the weapon and crushing it like paper. He rose to his full height, towering over the soldiers, the glow in his eyes burning like suns. They froze in terror, certain they were about to be torn apart. But Ka Wrath did not strike. Instead, he pushed the broken weapon aside and lowered his head. His voice rumbled low, calm, yet carrying the weight of thunder. "If I wished you dead, you would not have entered this room." The soldiers trembled. They expected rage, violence, blood. But Ka Wrath showed mercy, releasing them with nothing but his gaze. Slowly, the mutineers lowered their weapons, shame thick in their throats. When Captain Elias was summoned to the scene, his anger nearly boiled over. He wanted them punished, locked away for endangering not only Ka Wrath but the entire mission. Yet Ka Wrath raised a massive hand, stopping him. They act from fear. Fear is not weakness. Fear is the beginning of courage. The words silenced the chamber. Even the would-be assassins could not meet his eyes. Elias stood stunned, realizing the alien had chosen forgiveness where humans had chosen suspicion. In that moment, something shifted. For the first time, Elias saw not just a warrior, not just a survivor, but a leader. Later, in private, Elias confronted Ka Wrath. "Why spare them? They tried to kill you. You had every right to defend yourself." Ka Wrath's eyes glowed faintly, softer now. "Because they are not enemies. They are children standing before fire, not knowing if it will burn or warm. My people once killed those who doubted. It made us weak. Division is a sharper blade than any enemy." Elias listened in silence, the truth of the words settling heavily on his heart. Humanity had been on the brink of division itself, and Ka Wrath had chosen to mend the wound instead of widening it. But the alien was not finished. That same night, as the ship drifted in cold silence, Ka Wrath revealed the truth he had carried since the day he bowed before Elias. "My people had a prophecy," he said, his deep voice echoing in the dim chamber. "It spoke of a time when the stars would fall silent, when the devourers would rise unchecked. It spoke of an ally, small, fragile, yet unbroken. Humans. You." Elias's heart pounded. "A prophecy? You mean, your people knew about us? Long before this?" Ka Wrath nodded slowly. "Long before. We searched, across stars, across ages. We failed. I am last. But I found you. And now, you must choose." Elias shook his head, disbelief and dread battling inside him. "Why me? Why this ship? Humanity isn't ready for something like this. We're still learning, still fragile compared to you, compared to the devourers." Ka Wrath leaned closer, his golden gaze unblinking. "Fragile things bend. Fragile things endure. My people were strong. We broke. You may not." The words sank deep, stirring something Elias could not name. A mix of pride, fear, and responsibility pressed against his chest like a weight he could never set down. When the crew heard of the prophecy, division returned sharper than before. Some clung to it, desperate for hope, believing humanity had been chosen for greatness. Others recoiled, calling it manipulation, a story crafted to chain them to Ka Wrath's will. In the mess hall, arguments flared until fists flew. The ship felt smaller than ever, a prison of clashing voices and rising panic. Yet amidst the chaos, Elias stood firmer than before. He addressed his people with the voice of a captain who had stared into fire and refused to flinch. "Prophecy or not, the devourers are real. You've seen what they can do. We have two choices: stand divided and fall, or stand together and fight. His words carried not just command, but conviction, and for a moment, silence returned to the halls. But even Elias could not silence the doubt inside his own mind. Prophecy was a dangerous thing. It gave hope, but it also carried a darker shadow. Kaerath had said humanity would decide the fate of the galaxy. What if that fate was not salvation? What if it was destruction? As the stars outside flickered under the distant approach of the Devourers, Elias knew one truth with certainty. Humanity's time of choice was coming, and every decision would carve the future. Kaerath had befriended them, had spared them, had trusted them. But prophecy was a double-edged blade. And somewhere in the silence of space, Elias wondered, had humanity been chosen to save the galaxy, or to end it? The air aboard the colony ship was heavier than it had ever been. Training sessions continued, drills grew harsher, and every officer carried the weight of exhaustion in their eyes. But it was not fatigue alone that pressed down on them. It was doubt. Kaerath's towering form had become a symbol. Some saw him as a shield, others as a threat. And fear, when left unchecked, breeds betrayal. The muttering began in shadows. At first it was whispers in the mess hall, spoken in hushed tones over trays of untouched food. "He's steering us toward something," one soldier murmured. "Prophecy, prophecy, what if it's just a lie? What if we're handing him our captain's loyalty, and our future, for nothing?" Another replied in anger, "You saw those fleets. The Devourers are real. You think any human weapon will stop them without him?" Yet not all were convinced. Fear sharpened into resolve. A small faction of officers began meeting in secret, their voices low, their eyes darting at every sound. They convinced themselves that humanity's survival depended not on Kaerath, but on his death. The attempt came during the quiet hours, when most of the crew was asleep. The conspirators moved with practiced silence, weapons in hand, rifles modified with armor-piercing charges designed to pierce even Kaerath's thick hide. They entered the medbay, where the alien warrior sat in silence, his eyes closed, as though resting. For a moment, the soldiers hesitated. Even seated, Kaerath's size was overwhelming. He looked like a statue carved from stone, unbreakable and timeless. But fear drove them forward. One officer raised his weapon, whispered a shaky prayer, and prepared to fire. The strike never landed. Kaerath's arm moved with a speed that none of them had thought possible. His massive hand gripped the barrel of the rifle and crushed it as if it were made of thin glass. The soldiers stumbled back, panic in their eyes. Kaerath rose to his full height, his golden gaze burning with something primal. Every human in the room froze. They expected death, swift and brutal. They expected to be torn apart by the warrior's fury. But Kaerath did not kill them. He did not even strike them. Instead, he let the shattered weapon fall to the floor and spoke, his voice a low rumble that shook their bones. "If I wished you dead, you would not have entered this room." The words struck harder than any weapon. The mutineers stood trembling, weapons slipping from their hands. Mercy, not violence, had disarmed them. When Captain Elias arrived, summoned by the alarm, his fury was immediate. He wanted them punished, court-martialed, locked away. But Kaerath stopped him, placing a massive hand on his shoulder. "No," the alien said. "They act from fear. Fear makes mistakes. But fear also makes courage." Elias stared up at him, stunned. He saw no vengeance in Kaerath's golden eyes, only understanding. Slowly, Elias nodded. Against every instinct as a captain, he spared the conspirators. And word spread quickly. The giant alien had shown mercy where humans had not. The ship's whispers shifted. Some began to see him differently. Later, in the quiet of the training deck, Elias confronted Kaerath. "Why?" he demanded. "They tried to kill you. You had every reason to defend yourself." Kaerath sat cross-legged, his frame filling the room with an aura of immovable calm. "Because I have seen what division does," he said. "My people, strong, proud, certain of victory. We turned against each other when fear grew. We killed our own. And when the Devourers came, we fell faster because of it. Division is sharper than any blade." Elias listened in silence. For the first time, He understood the depth of Ka Ratha's burden. This was not just a warrior who had lost his people. This was a survivor determined not to let history repeat itself. It was that night Ka Rath revealed the secret he had carried since the beginning. He sat with Elias in the dim glow of the viewport, the stars stretching endlessly beyond them. "You ask why I bowed," Ka Rath said, his voice low, almost reverent. "You ask why I call you chosen. My people had prophecy. Long ago, it spoke of small ones, fragile yet enduring. When the stars fell silent, when the devourers rose, these small ones would decide the fate of all. Humans. You." Elias's chest tightened. "A prophecy," he whispered. "You're telling me your people searched the stars for us?" Ka Rath nodded. "Yes. We searched, and failed. I am last. But I found you. And now, you must choose." The words echoed like thunder in Elias's mind. Chosen. Humanity, the fragile, untested race wandering into the galaxy, was supposed to decide its destiny. But destiny could cut both ways. And what if the prophecy is wrong? Elias asked, his voice sharp. Ka Ratha's golden gaze pierced him. Then all is lost. When the crew heard of the prophecy, the ship fractured further. Some clung to it, desperate for hope. They whispered that humanity was destined for greatness, that their survival was written in the stars. Others rejected it violently, claiming it was a trap to bind them to Ka Ratha's will. The mess hall became a battlefield of voices, arguments flaring until fists were thrown. Fear clashed with hope, tearing the fragile unity apart. Elias stood before them all, his voice firm as steel. "Prophecy or not, we've seen the truth. The devourers are real. You've seen what they can do. We cannot run. We cannot hide. We can only fight. And the only way we fight is together." His words carried conviction, but doubt still gnawed at him. Late at night, staring at the endless stars, Elias felt the prophecy weigh on him like chains. Humanity would decide the fate of the galaxy. But would that fate be salvation, or destruction? As the ship drifted in the cold silence of space, with the devourers drawing ever closer, Elias understood a truth he could not escape. Ka Rath had given humanity hope. But hope was dangerous, for it demanded belief. And belief, if misplaced, could doom them all.